Chapter 782. The bloody wounds healed bit by bit, and the charred flesh regrew a new layer of skin. The only sad thing was that its snow-white fur wouldn't grow out in a short period of time. So, even though its injuries have healed, it has turned into a plump bald rabbit. It's funny no matter how you look at it. Of course, the fat rabbit still doesn't know its own situation. Bathed in the sound of the zither and the power of the contract, it comfortably stretches its whole body, making cooing sounds. The sound of the zither is played over and over again, from light and sweet, lingering and melodious, to more and more powerful and impassioned. Hum. The lingering sound of a tune that seems to be able to shake people's hearts resounds through the sky. Mu Yang can no longer support herself, her body goes limp and she falls to the ground. A strange blood-colored totem appears between Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit's eyebrows. After a flash of red light, it disappears into nothingness. At this very moment, there really isn't a trace of spiritual power or internal force in Mu Yang's body. Even moving a finger is incomparably difficult. However, when her gaze falls on the unharmed Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit, she shows a happy smile. Her babies are all right, that's great. Mu Yang reaches out and gently caresses Xiao Bao's sweaty little face, her eyes gentle. But suddenly, her face changes. With a sudden wave of her hand, she takes the unconscious Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit into the space. TSK, Jun Mu Yang, your current appearance of a stray dog really makes my body and mind happy. Mu Yang's eyes suddenly turn cold. She sits up with difficulty and looks in the direction of the dilapidated temple door. There, Gong Qianxue is walking towards her step by step, a carefree and complacent smile hanging on her face. And behind her is Jian Feng. After confirming that Wu Qishan could kill Xiao Bao with fire crystals and refine him into an elixir, Gong Qianxue found an excuse and left with Jian Feng. She already knew that Mu Yang would definitely come looking for her, and she would definitely have an endless conflict with Wu Qishan. So, she deliberately avoided them. Just to wait for the moment when the sandpiper and clam fight, and she would be the fisherman who benefits. Now, she has finally waited for this moment. Master. Senior brother. When Jian Feng saw the corpses of Wu Qishan and the others, he immediately screamed and rushed over. After discovering that Wu Qishan was dead, his face was filled with grief and he wailed loudly. Master, master, disciple had only left for a short while, how could you, who exactly are you? Just who was it that killed my entire Cloudlight sect? Master. Jian Feng was crying miserably, but Gong Qianxue had no time to care about him. All her attention is focused on Muyan. Ha 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 ha, Jun Muyan, you also have this day. Gong Qianxue fiercely glares at Mu Yang, her beautiful face distorting little by little, malevolent like a malicious spirit. You slut, it's all your fault that I'm in this state. Jun Muyan, I've said it before, all the pain you've inflicted on me, I'll definitely return it 1,000 times over. Now, the tables have turned. You've finally fallen into my hands. Tell me, how should I torture you? She laughed almost crazily. Should I chop off your hands and feet, soak them in a wine jar, and give them to a noble with a perverted hobby to enjoy? Or should I turn you into a puppet and make you beg for death? Ha 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 ha. Chapter 783. But she's doomed to be disappointed. Jun Muyan's complexion really isn't good, she can't even stand up. But her expression is cold and indifferent, looking at Gong Qianxue with a gaze that's more like looking at a jumping clown. Even in such a sorry state, Jun Muyan's face is still so beautiful, devastatingly beautiful. That languid and contemptuous smile on the corners of her mouth seems to be mocking her. Gong Qianxue is thoroughly infuriated. Flipping her wrist, a dagger flickering with a green light falls into her palm. Slut, I'm going to destroy this foxy face of yours right now. Gong Qianxue approaches Muyan step by step, her face revealing a sinister smile. Don't worry, even if your face is ruined and you become ugly, I promise that you'll enjoy the next program. Jun Muyan, do you know what I've arranged for you next? As she speaks, the dagger in her hand ruthlessly slashes towards Muyan's face. However, before the dagger can get close to Muyan, the Tian Mo Qin in front of her makes a buzzing sound. A sword aura breaks through the air, brushing past Gong Qianxue's face. Gong Qianxue only feels pain on her cheek, a strand of fine black hair fluttering down from the side of her temple. She reaches out to touch it, only feeling blood on her hand. Jun Muyin, you dare, even if I've lost more than half of my cultivation, Gong Qianxue, if I want to kill you, it's as easy as turning over my hand. Muyin interrupts Gong Qianxue's angry shout, her slightly hoarse voice carrying a bit of laziness and contempt, slowly saying, if you don't believe me, you can try. Her fingers are placed on the strings of the zither, poised to pluck. Gong Qianxue screams in fright, retreating again and again, falling on her butt to the ground. Qianxue, are you all right? Jian Feng promptly helps her up. His hateful gaze turns towards Muyin. Jun Muyin, was it you? Were you the one who killed my master and senior brother? Muyin carelessly looks at him, sneering, so what if I killed them? Your Yunguang sect kidnapped my son, and even wanted to refine him into an elixir. I'm already being polite by not exterminating your entire sect. You. How is this possible? Jian Feng screamed, my master is at the Anidia realm, how could he die in your hands? And my senior and junior brothers, which one of them isn't a spirit cultivator who trains their bodies and souls? How could you possibly kill them all by yourself? Heh. Muyin's smile becomes colder and colder. Perhaps your Cloud Light sect's many unjust deeds will bring about your own destruction. The heavens will punish those who are despicable. Jian Feng couldn't bear it anymore. He soared into the sky, his sword piercing through the air as he bellowed, Jun Muyin, I will kill you and avenge my master and fellow apprentices. Seeing Jian Feng's figure whistling over. Muyin's gaze sharpens and she clenches her teeth, suppressing the pain of her internal organs due to the drying up of her internal force and spiritual power. His fingertips suddenly plucked the strings of the zither. Clang, clang, clang. Along with the crisp sound of the zither, dozens of swords turned into cold gleams and shot toward the sword's edge. At the same time, there was also a formless energy that shrouded the edge of the sword, restricting his movements. Draw a prison. Jian Feng's body suddenly stopped in the air. Pu, pu, pu. More than 10 streaks of sword qi instantly pierced through his body. Fresh blood violently spurts out from Jian Feng's body. He lets out a miserable cry and falls to the ground. Muyin finally couldn't hold on any longer, and she suddenly spits out a mouthful of blood. A hint of regret flashed in her eyes. Chapter 784. Because his qi and spiritual power had dried up, the attack power of the musical blades had dropped by 90%. Otherwise, the dozen or so sword qis would have taken Jian Feng's life. And now, even though Jian Feng was seriously injured, he was still far from death. Jian Feng's entire body was bathed in blood. He struggled to get up from the ground, but in the end, he fell to the ground. Qianxue, give me healing pills, quick. Jian Feng originally had medicinal pills on him, but because Gong Qianxue's cultivation was low, Jian Feng was afraid that she would be injured and unable to be treated in time, so he gave all the medicinal pills that he had refined to Gong Qianxue. Gong Qianxue slightly lowered her eyes and walked step by step to the front of the sword edge. Jian Feng eagerly reached out to her. Qianxue, quickly, give me the pill. He knew that he was severely injured, but he also knew that this injury was not fatal. As long as he took a healing pill, he would be able to. A crisp sound rang out, followed by an intense pain from his wrist. The sword edge let out a blood-curdling screech. Then he met Gong Qianxue's cruel and sinister face. Trash, you're completely useless. You even wanted me to become your cauldron, allowing me to absorb the desolate will in your body. Jian Feng, who do you think you are? Jian Feng's eyes suddenly widened. His red eyeballs almost popped out as he looked at Gong Qianxue, who was very close to him. Qianxue, why did you do that to me? I love you so much. His voice suddenly rises, his face full of shock and disbelief. Gong Qianxue, for you, I gave up my identity as a spirit cultivator and stayed in the Yanwu continent, this barren land of mortals. You actually treat me like this? Heh. Gong Qianxue condescendingly looks at him, her expression disdainful. You're merely at the 3rd rank of body refining, and you can't even deal with that slut Jun Muyin. Why should I, Gong Qianxue, give myself to you? I'm going to become a person above others, a person who stands at the peak of cultivation. What's more, in order to return to the cultivation continent, you want me to become your cultivation vessel? You made me suffer the desolate ambition in your body and made me lose the chance to ascend. Jian Feng, who do you think you are? You actually want me, Gong Qianxue, to be your human furnace. Jian Feng shook his head and roared in a hoarse voice, didn't I do all of this for you? If you hadn't wanted to refine Jun Muyan's child into an elixir, we wouldn't have been chased like street rats in the Yanwu continent. I made you my cultivation vessel because I had no other choice but to return to the cultivation continent. Piak. Piak. 2 slaps landed on Jian Feng's face. At this moment, Jian Feng was seriously injured, but Gong Qianxue's cultivation had already reached the first level of the body refinement realm. Therefore, her 2 slaps caused Jian Feng to spit out a mouthful of blood. Gong Qianxue sneered, for me? All bullshit. If it was really for me, would you allow that bitch Wu Meiling to humiliate me? Will your sect look down on me? None of you are good people. All of you deserve to die. So I planned for you and Muyan to kill each other, ha 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 ha. Seeing your Yunguang sect in this miserable state, I'm very carefree. Jian Feng stared at her blankly. His eyes seemed to be stagnant and a little red. It's like he doesn't know this woman with a sinister smile in front of him. For Gong Qianxue, he gave up on his sect, gave up on his future and cultivation, gave up on everything to stay in the Yanwu continent. Chapter 785. It's actually this woman who killed master and fellow apprentices. Ha ha ha, not only did I exterminate your Yunguang sect, I also killed that slut Wu Meiling with my own hands. Gong Qianxue looks at Jian Feng's expression, and her laughter becomes more and more carefree. When that slut humiliated me, did she ever think that she would eventually die by my hands? Gong Qianxue, how did you become like this? Jian Feng's voice is hoarse, close to weeping blood. How could you do this to me? Swish. The sword light flashes, blood and severed arms splatter. In just a moment's effort, Jian Feng's limbs have already been chopped off by Gong Qianxue. Gong Qianxue's face shows a flowery smile. She takes out a draft and sprinkles it on Jian Feng's wounds, unhurriedly saying, Senior brother, didn't you say that I would give you a healing elixir to save you? Look, I'm saving you right now. Don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly. For the sake of your infatuation with me, I will keep you by my side for a while. Just like when you brought me to the Shozhen continent as a furnace, I will also raise you like a dog for a while. Jian Feng's eyes are bloodshot, unwaveringly glaring at her. At this moment, there's no longer a trace of friendship in his eyes, only bone-deep hatred. The spiritual power in his body surges. Jian Feng's eyes are filled with determination, wanting to perish together with her. In the next moment, however, Gong Qianxue has already crouched down, and the dagger dipped in poison pierces Jian Feng's dantian. She laughs, stirring the dagger around Jian Feng's abdomen. Jian Feng screams, struggling desperately, but as the dagger smashes his dantian, the poison seeps into his blood vessels, and the spiritual energy in his body disappears little by little. Even the tendons and veins in his whole body wither and break. After a few short breaths, Jian Feng collapses to the ground like a lump of rotten meat, unable to move anymore. Now, he's become a real trash. Gong Qianxue casually kicks Jian Feng, who can't move, and her line of sight falls on Muyan. A strong hatred flashes through her eyes, then she says with a faint smile, Jun Muyan, you are now an arrow at the end of its flight, not far from death. Mu Yang raised her eyebrows. Her smile was still as light as before, but it carried a domineering aura that looked down on the world. If you think that you have the ability to kill me, then why don't you come and give it a try? She just sat cross-legged on the dirty ground, her long and slender fingers slightly bent, casually resting on the strings of the zither. Her sleeves fluttered in the wind, and her face was as white as snow. A cool breeze blew through her slightly disheveled hair, revealing her stunning appearance. In an instant, even the dirty and run-down temple became like a fairyland. The jealousy and hatred in Gong Qianxue's eyes almost burned. Her line of sight falls on the bloodstain on the corner of Muyan's mouth and her pale complexion. At this moment, Jun Muyan must be seriously injured, on the verge of death. Her current appearance was merely a bluff to deceive him. But thinking like this, Gong Qianxue still hesitated to move forward. Jian Feng's fate was still fresh in his mind. What if this woman was just putting on an act and deliberately tricking him over so that she could kill him? Gong Qianxue furrowed her brows, and then slowly relaxed. The corner of her mouth slowly hooks up into a malicious smile, and she faintly says, "Jun Muyan, do you think that I want to kill you? You're wrong about that." Muyan slightly frowns. Chapter 786. Gong Qianxue's face is gloomy and cold. "My home and country have been destroyed, I have nothing, and I'm being spurned and chased like a stray dog. All of this is thanks to you, Jun Muyan. How could I be willing to let you die so easily?" Saying that, she cautiously takes out a blood-red bottle from her bosom. The moment this bottle appears, Muyan's heart suddenly jumps. At the same time, Qi Huang's somewhat startled and anxious voice reaches her ears. "Be careful, run quickly." That's, before Qi Huang could finish speaking, Gong Qianxue's palm has already ignited with a cluster of flames. Almost at the same time as the flame sprang up, the red bottle suddenly bursts. Gong Qianxue is caught off guard. She only feels that her eyes, ears, mouth, and nose have been splashed with some fishy and sweet liquid. But even more of it turns into a dark red stream of light, impatiently rushing towards Muyan. Muyan quickly plucks the zither strings. The zither sounds are loud, and most of the red light is scattered by the sword energy. But a small part still falls on Muyan. Muyan also smells a fishy and sweet smell. That smell is somewhat like musk, rich and sweet, but it also carries a nauseating stench. She suddenly lowers her head to look at the place where she was splashed. But she finds that the red liquid only stays on the surface of her body for a moment, then disappears without a trace. What is it? Muyan raises her head to look at Gong Qianxue, her eyes cold and heavy. "Gong Qianxue, what did you do?" Before the last word falls, her voice comes to a screeching halt, and her complexion greatly changes. From her lower abdomen, a scorching flame suddenly sprang up, flowing to every part of her body. In a split second, her breathing becomes rapid and scalding. Red clouds climb up her originally pale cheeks. Even her voice carried a tingling sensation that made one's heart itch unbearably. Muyan only feels that her body, which has already been drained of strength, is being melted by a scorching energy. Her body sways, and she weakly falls to the ground. Qi Huang's complex sigh comes to her ears. "Yin Yang Sho, it really is Yin Yang Sho, Yin Yang Sho? What is that?" When Gong Qianxue was splashed with that red liquid, she was scared out of her wits. But when Muyan's appearance clearly starts to change, and she herself is normal, she immediately shows a happy smile. Very good. It seems that the masked woman didn't lie to her. This Yin Yang Sho only has an effect on Muyan. Looking at Jun Muyan's flushed face, her breathing hurried, and her peach blossom eyes filled with spring, Gong Qianxue only feels unspeakably carefree. "Muyan, how do you feel after being hit by my Yin Yang Sho? Do you really want a man?" Mu Yang stares at her, his voice hoarse. "Yin Yang Sho? Yin Yang Sho." Muyan stares at her. "Because this isn't something that would exist in the Yanwu continent." Gong Qianxue laughs heartily, walking towards her step by step. "Jun Muyan, you see how good I am to you. Even the Yin Yang Sho, a rare treasure of the Xiuzhen continent, was used by you. Do you want to know what will happen to those who are struck by this Yin Yang Sho?" Chapter 787. Jun Muyan's expression slowly turns cold. Her voice was filled with uncontrollable passion and sweetness. But her tone was unexpectedly calm. "Who gave you the yin-yang evil energy? This yin-yang baleful energy is specially used to deal with me." She didn't believe that a fool like Gong Qianxue could get a GU like Yin-Yang Sho. Yes, the moment the red liquid entered her body, Mu Yang already knew that this Yin-Yang Sho was a kind of GU. However, this GU was far more powerful than the golden silkworm GU. Based on her current state of exhaustion, it was impossible for her to expel the yin-yang evil from her body. Moreover, even if her current cultivation was in perfect condition, she would not be able to do anything to the yin-yang evil in her body. Such a GU worm was not something Jian Feng or Cloud Light Sect could give to Gong Qianxue. It was more like the golden silkworm Jiyu that Liu Se had taken out back then. Could it be related to Di Mingju's mainland? Muyan's mind is in a mess. The boiling blood in her body and the increasingly unbearable tide of passion made her want to tear off all her clothes. Gong Qianxue was originally very dissatisfied with Muyan's calm expression. At this moment, seeing her gasping for breath and uncontrollably tearing at her clothes, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jun Muyan, it must be very hard to endure, right? Why don't you let this empress help you again? As she spoke, she quickly walked to the dilapidated temple and pulled out a sack from the bushes outside the temple. The sack was very big and very heavy. When Gong Qianxue dragged it, from time to time, a man's pained moans came from inside. When the sack was opened, a tall and sturdy man with an extremely ugly appearance appeared. If a normal person saw his face and body covered in lumps, they would be so disgusted that they wanted to vomit. As soon as the sack was opened, the man knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. "Don't kill me. Please don't kill me." When Gong Qianxue saw his face, she immediately averted her gaze in disgust. She then chuckled and said, "It's fine if you don't want me to kill you, but I only want you to do one thing for me. If you do a good job, I'll let you live. If you don't do it well, hehe, I'll cut you up and throw you to the Wuwang Mountains to feed the beasts. No, don't kill me. I beg immortal aunt to spare my life. No matter what immortal aunt wants this little one to do, this little one will definitely complete it." As he spoke, he was so scared that his legs began to tremble. A yellow, stinky liquid flowed out from between his legs. It was a very disgusting scene. Gong Qianxue looked at his cowardly and dirty appearance, but laughed even more happily. "What I want you to do is to ruthlessly fuck the bitch behind you in front of me." The ugly man seemed to be stunned and turned to look at where Gong Qianxue was pointing. Then, he suddenly widened his eyes and opened his mouth wide, saliva dripping down from the corner of his lips. The pair of eyes that were mostly covered by the protruding lumps of flesh revealed an infatuated and greedy light. Soon after, he seemed to suddenly come back to his senses and said excitedly, "Fairy, fairy, you mean, you want me to do that to that fairy-like beauty? To do that, Pa?" Gong Qianxue fiercely kicked his face with the corner of her clothes, and said with hatred, "What fairy-like beauty? She was just a slut, a whore who could be fucked by anyone. If you dare to say another word, I will cut off your tongue. Just tell me, are you going to do it or not?" Chapter 788. The man doesn't dare to believe that he could have such luck with women. Seeing that disgusting man getting closer and closer to Jun Muyan, the smile on Gong Qianxue's face becomes crazier and more distorted. "Jun Muyan, you're not even 15 years old, yet you've given birth to a little bastard out of wedlock. Presumably, you must be very thirsty for men. In these short 5 years, your strength has climbed to such a level. I don't know how many men's beds you've climbed in exchange for your current status. Based on what? Based on what have you climbed to this height? Based on what have you trampled me under your feet? Hehe, don't you like to hook up with men? Don't you like to give birth to little bastards with wild men? This time, I'll fulfill your wish. If this man isn't enough, Ben Gong can find 8 or 10 more for you. Ha 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 ha." Gong Qianxue's penetrating gaze falls on Jun Muyan, all her hatred turning into sinister cruelty. She seems to have foreseen the scene of Jun Muyan being trampled and humiliated like a rag doll by an ugly beggar in a moment. It's all Jun Muyan's fault that she has fallen to such a state. And she wants Jun Muyan's fate to be 1,000 times more miserable than hers. That ugly man has already crawled in front of Muyan. Seeing Muyan's face up close, he can't help but swallow, his face full of greedy desire and bewildered passion. That dirty and greasy hand reaches out towards Muyan's face. However, before his hand could fall, his whole body suddenly stiffens, revealing an aghast expression. He sees that the beautiful girl in front of him is still flushed, her breathing rapid. But that pair of eyes, calm and unperturbed, carries a bone-chilling chill. It's as if he would be directly dismembered under that kind of gaze. "Do you know who I am?" The voice that comes out of Muyan's mouth carries an insuppressible panting and sweetness, but her expression is as calm and resolute as ever. "My name is Jun Muyan. You should know who I am, right?" Hearing those 3 words, Jun Muyan, The ugly man suddenly widens his eyes, even his breathing becomes a bit hurried. Jun Muyin. In the current Yenwu continent, who wouldn't know this name? She's the world's #1, Enchantress of medicine. With silver needles in her hands, she can bring the dead back to life. She was not even 20 years old, but she had already reached the peak of the innate realm. Her strength was invincible. She was the owner of the Nether Flame Valley and the leader of the millions of Nether Flame army. She was the most lofty and inviolable existence in the entire continent. The ugly man's expression was sluggish, and his body couldn't help but tremble. God, what was he going to do just now? Actually trying to profane the Enchantress Jun Muyin? Not to mention how many people the Enchantress Muyin has saved in the Yenwu continent, and how many people worship her. Everyone in the Nether Flame army knew that they worshipped Muyin like a god. If anyone dared to hurt Muyin, they would be punished. His fate would be 110,000 times worse than death. I don't dare, I don't dare. The ugly man stepped back in horror and shook his head repeatedly. Gong Qianxue was about to explode with anger. In order to disgust and humiliate Muyin, she specifically found the ugliest, most useless, and dirtiest beggar. Who would have thought that this beggar would be so cowardly? In front of a warm and fragrant jade, he actually doesn't dare to touch that slut, Jun Muyin. Trash, what are you doing? Hurry up and fuck her to death. Chapter 789. You can't. Waste. Then go die for me. Gong Qianxue ruthlessly sends the ugly beggar flying with a kick. Gnashing her teeth, she says, I'll give you one last chance. If you don't do as I say, don't blame me for being impolite. Hehe, Princess Qianxue, there's no need to get angry. He doesn't dare, but Shen does. A man's deep voice comes from outside the door. Immediately after, she sees a man wearing a bright yellow brocade robe, followed by 2 black-clothed guards, slowly walking into the dilapidated temple. This man looks to be in his 40s, with a beard above his lips. His appearance can only be considered ordinary, but his whole body has the dignified aura of being in a high position all year round. The moment she sees this man, Muyin's brows suddenly wrinkle. The yin-yang sha that was originally forcibly suppressed within her body is stirring, making her unable to restrain herself from letting out a low moan. When Gong Qianxue sees the person, she reveals a surprised expression. Li Jinrui, how come you're here? That's right, the person who has come is actually Li Jinrui, the emperor of Huangyao. He used to be Jin Wangye's elder brother, and also Li Wen's father. Li Jinrui smiles faintly. Jin heard the sound of thunder, so I came to take a look. I didn't expect to see such an interesting scene. Even though the words are directed at Gong Qianxue, his gaze falls on Muyin, his eyes full of greedy desire and raging ambition. Gong Qianxue looks at his naked gaze and giggles. It turns out that the emperor of Huangyao also wants to have a taste of this woman, Muyin. However, don't say that I didn't warn you. Muyin's body has yin-yang sha. Only one man can't satisfy her. Why don't the 3 of you come together? Hearing Gong Qianxue's words, the eyes of the 2 guards beside Li Jinrui brighten. They look towards Muyin's direction, breathing rapidly. Li Jinrui is already walking towards Muyin, chuckling. Miss Jun, I didn't expect that we would meet in this way. This is truly a heaven-sent fate. Miss Jun, rest assured, after Jun obtains your body, I will certainly give you a status. At that time, Mingyang Valley will also be incorporated into the sphere of influence of the Huangyao dynasty. Later on, you will be the supreme imperial consort of Huangyao. As Li Jinrui spoke, his eyes flashed with a blazing light. In the Yenwu continent, 3 countries stand in a tripartite balance, but Huangyao was originally the well-deserved leader among the 3 countries. He was also the emperor of an overlord nation. However, the Nether Flame Valley had risen overnight. The situation of the entire Yenwu continent has changed. The Tiandao sect was destroyed, and the Nether Flame army became the #1 faction in the world. With the support of Nether Flame Valley, Kaiyang country directly trampled Huangyarogua underfoot. How could Li Jinrui, who was used to being high and mighty, be willing to accept this? Not to mention, without the Tiandao sect, without those embryos that could restore one's youth, How could he achieve immortality? How to stay young forever? He was anxious, hateful, desperate, and exasperated, but he felt as if he had been abandoned by the heavens. But now, Li Jinrui knew that not only had the heavens not abandoned him, they had even given him an excellent opportunity. No matter how powerful the Nether Flame Army is, no matter how illustrious Jun Muyan's reputation is, she is still a woman in the end. As long as he took her body and took away her innocence, she would definitely follow him wholeheartedly. At that time, whether it was Jun Muyan or the Nether Flame Army, wouldn't they all belong to him? Chapter 790. With a genius doctor like Jun Muyan, it would be as easy as turning over his hand if he wanted to live forever. Needless to say, Jun Muyan is still a stunningly beautiful and alluring stunner. The more Li Jinrui thought about it, the more excited he became. He strode towards Mu Yang, who had fallen limply to the ground and was unable to move. Stroking Mu Yan's flushed cheeks with one hand, Li Jinrui's tone is filled with an irresistible strength. Truly a heavenly beauty, no wonder even Zhen's royal brother fell head over heels for you, and even died in your hands. However, if you think you can escape from my hands today, then you're dreaming. If you are obedient, I will definitely love you dearly. Li Jinrui's hand is pressed on Mu Yang's face. His palm is wet and sticky, like a reptile moving on her face, making her feel disgusted. But Mu Yang raised the corner of his lips, and slowly laughed. Gong Qianxue said that I don't have the ability to resist. Do you really think that I'm a fish on the chopping block, and can be slaughtered by others? The smile on Li Jinrui's face froze, and he subconsciously wanted to withdraw his hand. However, he was still a step too late. With a thump, Li Jinrui felt a sharp pain in his wrist that had just touched Mu Yan's cheek. He let out a blood-curdling scream as his entire palm and wrist were sliced off. Blood splattered everywhere. In the next moment, Mu Yang, who should already be unable to move, has already soared into the sky. The sound of the zither was stirring, and the sword chi was flying. Poochie. That was the sound of sword chi entering flesh. Gong Qianxue only felt a sharp pain in her body. There were already several bloody holes in her chest and abdomen. The sound of the zither continued. The dilapidated temple shook, sand and stones rolled down, and dust flew everywhere. The people in the dilapidated temple were all anxious, afraid that the blade would land on their bodies in the next moment. However, after a while, the sound of the zither died down. When the dust has settled, Li Jinrui looks around, but there's no sign of Jun Muyan. He holds his crippled right hand, and his expression changes several times. Gnashing his teeth, he says, Jun Muyan, she was just bluffing just now. Go into the Wuwang Mountains and search for Zhen. She can't have gone far. You must find this woman. As long as he calmed down and thought about it, Li Jinrui would understand. Jun Muyan has been drugged by Gong Qianxue, and is already an arrow at the end of its flight. Otherwise, with her cultivation, how could she not have killed all of them and instead fled in defeat? To obtain Muyan, this is the best and only chance. He will never give it up. Looking at his painful right hand, Li Jinrui's eyes were filled with brutality. Jun Muyan, you dare to break Zhen's palm. In a moment, Zhen will make you wish you were dead, crying and begging for mercy under Zhen. Just as Li Jinrui and his subordinates were about to leave, the sweet moans of a woman came from not far away. Several people turned their heads to chop, only to see that Gong Qianxue had unknowingly torn off all the clothes on her body, only a red undergarment still hanging off her body. There were several wounds on her chest and abdomen, but she didn't seem to feel it at all. When she saw Li Jinrui looking over, she immediately stretched out her hand in agitation and panted, "Give it to me. Give it to me." Li Jinrui sneered, "The appearance of Princess Qianshue's jade body lying on the ground is really tempting. It's a pity that Zhen has just seen Jun Muyan's peerless beauty. Zhen doesn't care about ordinary goods like you. If the princess is really that thirsty, why don't we?" Chapter 791. Although Gong Qianshue's consciousness is almost burnt by the fiery desire of her whole body. But as soon as the ugly man approaches, a fishy smell immediately hits her. The horrendous face full of lumps is right in front of her, and Gong Qianxue screams in fright, "No, I don't want this ugly freak, get out, get out." She reaches out to push him away, but there seems to be something gnawing at her flesh in her abdomen, burning her desire. Give it to me. Give it to me. Quickly give it to me. Gong Qianshue's eyes are bewildered, and she can't bear it anymore. She grabs the ugly man and bites him. Li Jinrui and his men watch the scene of a snow-white beauty and an ugly and dirty man making love. On one hand, they feel disgusted, but on the other hand, their blood vessels are gushing. Gong Qianshue and Jun Muyin are clearly under the same drug. They just need enough time to ferment. When the time comes, no matter how arrogant Jun Muyin is, she will throw herself into his arms without shame, begging for his tender affection. Li Jinrui swallows his saliva, thinking that he will be able to press Jun Muyin under his body in a moment. His breathing becomes a little heavier. He must quickly find Jun Muyin, and then thoroughly possess her, turning her into his own. Wuwang Mountains, west side. Muyin looks up at the sky, where the thunderclouds are still dense, and the sound of thunder can be heard. Her blurred vision flashes. How is the shadow demon? She'll be all right, right? However, this clear thought only flashes for a moment before an extreme thirst and burning sensation rushes up, burning away her reason. Muyin's figure shakes, her legs go soft, and she falls to the ground. Heavy gasps overflow from her cracked lips and teeth, her sweaty hair droops over her forehead, and the reason in her dark peach blossom eyes dissipates little by little. Muyin closes her eyes and climbs up from the ground with difficulty. Looking inside with his divine sense, he can clearly see the turbulence and nothingness in the space of the Tianmo Qin. The space of the Tianmo Qin has always been related to her state, to the undulations of her breath. At this time, her body is suffering from yin and yang evil energy, and her life is in danger, so the space of the Tianmo Qin is also beginning to become unstable. Muyin takes a deep breath, and finds a safe cave. She takes out Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit, and places them inside. Forming the blood contract had consumed too much of the man and beast's energy. They wouldn't wake up for at least 3 days. Mu Yang absent-mindedly looks at Xiao Bao. She reaches out her hand and gently touches his ice-cold face. Then, she resolutely turns around and leaves. She knew that the yin-yang baleful qi in her body was about to burn away all of her will and soul. No one knew the power of the yin-yang shoreland better than her. Once she was unable to suppress it, the yin-yang shoreland would completely burn and erupt. Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit would definitely die in the space. How could she allow her baby to be hurt? Moreover, Li Jinrui probably wouldn't let this matter rest and would come looking for him sooner or later. Little girl, do you know that if you don't solve the yin-yang baleful qi, you will die? After settling Xiao Bao down, Mu Yang erased the traces and walked on for a while. Finally, she collapsed between the mountain walls. 7 Brilliance's calm voice rang in his ears. She opened her eyes in a trance and saw Qi Huang's face that was even more seductive than a woman's. Qi Huang lowered his head to look at her, his glass-like eyes unfathomably deep. His warm breath lightly breathed on Mu Yang's face, carrying the coolness of a youth and the sexiness of a man. Like lightning striking the ground, it reignites the originally suppressed fire within Mu Yang's body. Chapter 792. Qi Huang reached out his hand, his fingers gently caressing her face as he murmured in a low and hoarse voice, "Do you know that if you want to resolve the yin-yang shore, you can only have intercourse with someone who possesses divine power? And on this Yenwu continent, no one possesses divine power. But I can." Qi Huang held her face and slowly lowered his head. The youth's fair cheeks were stained with a rosy blush. For the first time, his voice also carried an emotional huskiness. "One cause begets one effect. It was your star field that allowed this noble one to solidify my body ahead of time and regain my divine power. Mu Yang, don't be afraid, I will save you." Qi Huang slowly lowered his head, his eyes anxiously staring at the girl's pink lips. As an ancient artifact spirit, it had lived in this world for tens of thousands of years, but it had never known what love was. This time, he wanted to give it a try. He wanted to know what it felt like to be intimate with the girl in front of him who shocked his soul again and again. Rumble. Thunder boomed in the sky. Qi Huang's lips almost touched Muyin's. Muyan suddenly reaches out and pushes him away, her hoarse voice suppressing endless pain and emotions. Get lost. Muyan slaps Qi Huang's head to the side. There's no change in the expression on his face. He just calmly looks at Muyan. Why can't I? Just because I'm not Di Mingju? What if I tell you that one day, this sage will be even more powerful than Di Mingju? Don't you know that if this goes on, you will die? Mu Yang gritted her teeth and said hoarsely, whether I will die or not, it's my business, but what if I don't want you to die? Qi Huang takes a step closer, abruptly grabs both of her hands and presses her to the ground. His pillously handsome face approaches little by little. Jun Muyan, what if I don't want you to die? The only master I can accept is you. If you die, I'll have to fall into a deep sleep again. I don't want to. So, mate with me and let me save you. This is the only way for you to survive. The youth's serene aura lingered at the tip of her nose, pervasive. The yin-yang baleful aura in his body seemed to have sensed the alluring aura and suddenly became active. Muyan gives a muffled groan, her stomach feels like it's on fire. She almost couldn't control herself from reaching out, wanting to hug Qi Huang's body. However, all of a sudden, his hands grabbed Qi Huang's neck and forced him to retreat. Muyan's eyes are bloodshot and her voice is hoarse. Qi Huang, as the master of the Tianmo Qin and the sole successor of the Shun musicians, I order you to stay away from me. If you dare to touch me again, I promise that I will never play the Tianmo Qin again. The air seemed to freeze between the two of them. Muyan's tone slows down, but it also carries a disdainful imposing manner, but I promise you, I won't die. A mere yin-yang baleful qi cannot kill me. You will not lose your master, nor will you fall into a deep sleep. But this kind of thing, I will only do it with the person I like. So, get out of here right now. The desire and stubbornness in Qi Huang's eyes faded away bit by bit, replaced by a more complicated emotion. Suddenly, he angrily pushed Mu Yang away, and angrily said, if you don't understand, then don't understand. If you want to court death, then don't tell me that I have to stop you. Humph, why can't it be Di Mingju? How can Ben Zun not compare to Di Mingju? Chapter 793. Hearing that, Muyan's already weak body almost faints from anger. What was written in Bailey Liuin's notes? It's really bad for Qi Huang. She gasps and glares at him fiercely. Shut up, you, hairy little brat, I'm already having a hard time. Get back to the Tianmo Qin, don't come and add to the mess. Qi Huang stays where he is, as if struck by lightning. Little brat, little brat, little brat. Jun Muyan actually called him a little brat. He's a dignified ancient artifact spirit, how could he be a little brat? She actually said that his hair hasn't grown yet. Just as Qi Huang is about to go crazy, Muyan's expression suddenly changes. She raises her hand, and the Tianmo Qin appears in front of her. Qi Huang, return to the Tianmo Qin, don't come out again. Saying that, she directly plucks the strings. Qi Huang's complexion changes, his eyes revealing anxiety, but he still immediately returns to the Tianmo Qin. Almost at the same moment that Qi Huang disappears, Li Jinrui and his men arrive. Your Majesty, Jun Muyan is here. The wound on Li Jinrui's hand has already been bandaged. He leisurely rides a big horse, and when he sees the battered and exhausted Muyan on the ground, he reveals a carefree smile. Jun Muyan, why are you running? In the end, you still can't escape from Jun's palm? Muyan reaches out, wanting to pluck the strings. But her whole body is boiling hot, and she has no strength at all. In the end, her movements are still too slow. An old pre-celestial at Li Jinrui's side waves a palm, and the Tianmo Qin is thrown into the distance. Without your Qin, Jun would like to see how you will resist. Li Jinrui dismounts from his horse, and steps towards Muyan. Thanks to you, I don't have this hand of mine anymore. He looks at Muyan gloomily, his face full of cruelty and tyranny. Jun originally wanted to treat you gently, but since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame Jun for being impolite. Li Jinrui looks back, a treacherous smile on his face. Jun doesn't intend to bring you back to the palace. Here, in front of Jun's men, I want you. The knockout drug in your body is very strong. At that time, everyone here will see you holding Jin in joy, begging Jin to dote on you, ha ha ha. Mu Yang took a deep breath, her eyes filled with a strong killing intent. She didn't want to go this far and die together with this wretched and disgusting man. However, if he did not act decisively, he would lose the best opportunity. He bit the tip of his tongue fiercely, and the pain made his mind clear. He also circulated the remaining spiritual power in his body. Mu Yang gently hooks her finger, and the Di Mo Qin that had fallen in the distance floats up. In a split second, the Tian Mo Qin transforms into a 7-colored longsword, and fuses back into one. It was the transparent 7 supreme swords. She no longer had enough spiritual power to control the 7 absolute swords to kill, but she could control them to return. Without any spiritual power, returning the 7 absolute sword to his body was equivalent to suicide. Whoosh! The 7 absolute swords turned into a bolt of lightning, whistling toward him and Li Jinrui, who was close at hand. Your Majesty! Your Majesty, be careful! The people of Huang Yarou country screamed in fear. Li Jinrui turned his head around and slashed. Before he could see what was coming, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. The 7 absolutes sword mercilessly pierced through his body, and continued to fly towards Mu Yang. Mu Yang slowly raised her head, her expression calm and fearless, waiting for the 7 absolutes sword to return. Chapter 794. The 7 absolute swords whizzing in front of him were stopped by a slender hand. Just like blocking a tiny willow branch, the attack is easily blocked, and it once again transforms into the Tian Mo Qin. Yang Yang, how are you? The man's familiar voice, filled with anxiety and fear, rings in her ears. Mu Yan's body fiercely trembles. Since the accident, she has been suppressing her emotions, and at this moment, it finally overflows. Di. Mingju, you're finally back. Why did you come back so late? Mu Yan grabs the man's lapel, burying her face in his chest. She can no longer hold back her tears, and they surge down. When Xiao Bao went missing, when she saw the corpses of the ink camp, when the fat rabbit drowned, when they made the blood contract, and when she was hit by the yin-yang evil qi, it's not that she wasn't afraid. But she can't be afraid, and she can't retreat. That's because she's shouldering the safety and happiness of too many people. But at this very moment, she's tightly held in the man's arms, listening to his urgent inquiry and guilty self-blame. For the first time, Mu Yan wants to be willful and unbridled, to rely on him. This is Di Mingju, the only man in the world who can move her heart. Di Mingju tightly holds the weak Mu Yan. The remorse and anger in his heart simply erupts like a tsunami. Especially when he detects that Mu Yan is hit by the yin-yang evil qi, the murderous intent on his body churns like magma. Yang Yang, don't be afraid, I won't let anything happen to you. Di Mingju gently puts Mu Yan on the ground, his voice soft and unbelievably hoarse. Wait a moment, wait for me to deal with these dregs, then I'll remove the Gu poison from your body. He seems to want to bow his head and kiss Mu Yan's forehead. But thinking of the effect of the yin-yang evil qi, he pauses his movements. He only looks at Mu Yan's brows, gentle and doting as if it could drip water. However, when he turns around and looks at the people of Huang Yarou, all that gentleness completely turns into a bone-piercing killing intent. He knows better than anyone what the yin-yang evil qi represents. It's one of the 10 great poisons of the Tianyi men, and even in the Shoshan continent, only a few people can withstand it. Those who were invaded by the yin-yang baleful qi would feel as if they had been drugged. If they didn't copulate, the yin-yang baleful qi would turn into a raging fire that would burn their soul and blood to death. The bone-chilling blue eyes swept over everyone present, and the voice that came out of his mouth was like that of an Azura from hell. Who gave her the yin-yang evil qi? No, not us, it's Gong Qianxue. The pre-celestial old man who just sent Mu Yan's Tian Mo Qin flying is scared out of his wits. He can't even speak properly. We don't know anything. We were just ordered to search for Mu Yan. It was His Majesty. It was Li Jinrui who wanted Mu Yan, and ordered us to search. We really don't know anything. Spare us, spare us. Whoosh. Before the Xiantian realm old man could finish his words, a powerful pressure that made people tremble was released. Heaven and earth shook, and the strange beasts in the mountains roared. That earth-shaking power is incompatible with the entire Yenwu continent, but it's like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. In just a short moment, it has already engulfed everyone present. Many people still keep their mouths open to beg for mercy, but their movements are forever frozen. Soon after, under the blowing of the evening wind, they suddenly burst apart, turning into bloody dregs that irrigate the soil of the Wuwang Mountains. Rumble. Chapter 795. Di Mingju raises his head and coldly glances at her. Without pausing for a moment, he turns around and picks up Muyan from the ground. Thunder and lightning fall from the sky, but not a single one dares to strike Di Mingju's body. Just like that, he holds Muyan and walks away step by step. The world is in turmoil, the wind is howling, strange beasts are roaring, and thunder is rumbling. However, in this world, there's nothing that dares to stop his pace. Cool water gurgles out of her dry mouth. Muyan swallows a few times and opens her eyes. The first thing that comes into view is Di Mingju's incomparably handsome face. She struggles to sit up, but she feels a sudden rush of heat in her lower abdomen. She gives a muffled groan, letting out a sticky and limp moan. All the lines on Di Mingju's body are taut. His lips are tightly pursed, as if he's suppressing something. Those dark blue eyes reflect Muyan's shadow, and there's even a blazing flame burning within them. He takes a deep breath to suppress his crazy desire. His voice is hoarse as he says, "Yang Yang, don't move. The more you move, the more you circulate your spiritual power, the faster the yin-yang sha will flare up." At this very moment, there seems to be a voice in Muyan's mind that is clamoring for her to throw herself into Di Mingju's arms. The yin-yang sha is already hard to endure, and now that she's facing Di Mingju, she's simply receiving the most terrible torture in the world. Yin-yang sha, is there really only one way that can solve it? She bites her lower lip and looks at Di Mingju. Di Mingju forces himself to move his gaze away from her rosy pink lips and her pearly white teeth. His voice becomes even more hoarse. "No, Yang Yang, rest assured, Ben Jun has a way to remove the yin-yang sha on your body." "What way?" Muyan asks. Suddenly, her gaze turns and falls on Di Mingju's chest. At this time, Di Mingju is only wearing his inner clothes, which are tightly wrapped. She can't see the scenery inside. But on the left side of his chest, there's a faint red mark. Muyan suddenly recalls the liquid that she just drank. That liquid is very cool, like a basin of ice water. It extinguishes the desire and burning pain in her body. Although she was suffering now, it was much better than when she was in the jungle just now, where even her soul was about to be roasted dry. However, at this moment, Mu Yang recalled that the cool liquid carried a trace of the smell of blood. Mu Yang abruptly reaches out and pulls open Di Mingju's lapel. On the left side of his chest, there was a small scar that had not yet healed. Muyan's pupils suddenly widen. "Take the blood from the heart and feed it to me, Di Mingju, is this the other way you said?" Was this man crazy? Heart blood was equivalent to a person's life force. Taking out his heart blood like this was equivalent to handing over his life and cultivation to him bit by bit. Di Mingju casually gathers his lapel and holds Muyan's hand in his palm. He lowers his head and gently drops a kiss on Muyan's forehead, softly saying, "It's just a few bowls of heart blood, it can't do anything to Ben Jun. Do you really think that Ben Jun is so weak? Was there a second way to resolve the yin-yang evil qi?" "Yes, and that was to let Mu Yang consume a bowl of blood from the heart of a person with divine power every hour. Using the blood essence that contains divine power to extinguish the burning yin-yang evil qi. After taking 9 bowls of heart blood, the yin-yang evil qi would thoroughly disappear. But at the same time, Di Mingju's cultivation would also drop by a realm." Chapter 796. Half an hour has passed. "Yang Yang, you have to take the second bowl of blood now." Di Mingju casually grabs a dagger from the side and stabs himself in the chest. Mu Yang abruptly reaches out and stops his movements. Di Mingju looks at her tenderly, like he's looking at his most cherished treasure. Yang Yang, don't be afraid, nothing will happen, I will definitely save you. Not waiting for him to finish speaking, Mu Yang grabs his collar and suddenly pulls. Caught off guard, Ming-ju doesn't dare to exert force for fear of hurting Muyin. His body suddenly leans forward, and in a split second, the two of them are so close that they can hear each other's breath. Ming-ju's eyes suddenly deepen. The flames burning at the bottom of his eyes seem like they could rush out at any time and completely engulf Muyin. Ming-ju, have you never thought of using another method to help me resolve the yin-yang evil qi? The girl's soft voice was filled with endless temptation. Ming-ju's breathing suddenly quickens. Had he thought about it? How could he not have thought about it? Even in his dreams. But he couldn't. He promised to give Mu Yang the best, and not take advantage of her when she's down. Ming-ju takes a deep breath, his voice is unreasonably hoarse. Yang Yang, don't test my endurance, I don't want you to regret it. As he spoke, he pried her hands open. What if I have to challenge? Mu Yang grabbed his wrist and said word by word. What if I say that I won't regret it? Her breathing was also messy and hot. The yin-yang evil energy in her body seems to be drawn out again by Ming-ju's breath, making her voice carry an infinite charm. In a split second, Ming-ju's eyes turn red. He felt that his soul was about to be hooked away by the demoness beneath him. Unfortunately, Muyin still reaches out and gently caresses his face. Because you are Ming-ju, I will not regret it. Or are you saying that you like me and want me all fake? Ming-ju's chest heaves up and down. He suddenly reaches out and presses Muyin's hands on both sides. His hoarse voice seems to be roaring from the depths of his soul. You will soon know how much I want you. His clothes were quickly torn off. But Ming-ju soon feels the trembling of the girl beneath him. She was clearly burning with lust, but her slender body was trembling uncontrollably. Ming-ju looks into Muyin's peach blossom eyes that seem like limpid autumn waters. No matter how well she concealed it, one could still see the fear and helplessness in her eyes. It's like a basin of ice water has been poured over Ming-ju's desire. In a split second, he's filled with remorse, heartache, and bitterness. In fact, Muyin wasn't ready to accept him at all. She just didn't want to use her heart's blood. Silly girl. Ming-ju stops and gently kisses the space between her eyebrows. Yang Yang, I said that I would wait for you to be ready to accept me. From body to heart, completely accept me. You don't have to force yourself in front of me at any time. If a mere bit of heart blood could kill me, then I wouldn't be the polar domain's sovereign lord. Yang Yang, I just want to spoil you forever, and make you happier than anyone else in the world. Mu Yang's body fiercely trembles. She could feel the man's desire, and she could see that his eyes were bloodshot because of extreme endurance. But even so, he would rather choose to harm himself in order to save her. Ming-ju, what virtue or ability do I have, that you could treat me like this in this life? Chapter 797. What is she afraid of? It was the dark cave of the past. It was the days and nights of heat, pain, ecstasy, and fear. Every time Ming-ju is too intimate with her, she can't help but recall those unbearable memories of the past. Even though more than 10 years had passed, those memories were still imprinted in the depths of her soul, and she could not forget them. However, it was time to move on from the lonely, vulnerable, and helpless past. For Xiaobao, for herself, and for this man who had captivated her heart. Hearing Muyin's low murmur, Ming-ju couldn't help but ask, "What are you afraid of?" Muyin, however, chuckles softly and hoarsely, "It's nothing, that's all in the past. From now on, Ming-ju, only you are my future." Ming-ju's pupils suddenly contract. His handsome and flawless face even reveals a sinister expression due to extreme nervousness. "Jun Muyin, do you know what you're saying?" Muyin's eyes stare at him without blinking, no longer dodging or escaping. Ming-ju, I want to answer that question in advance. Which? Ming-ju's hoarse voice comes to an abrupt halt. He had wanted to ask which question. However, he immediately remembered their promise. After Muyin ascends to the Xiuzhen continent, She will tell him whether or not she is willing to grow old together with him. Mingju's sexy Adam's apple bobs up and down, and he spits out a few words with difficulty. What is the answer? Muyan slightly straightens up, and softly kisses Mingju's lips. Mingju, I, Jun Muyan, like you. From now on, as long as you don't leave, I won't abandon you. Having said that, Muyan endures the restlessness of the yin and yang evil energy within her body, and looks at Mingju's reaction. However, the man on top of her seemed to be in a daze. His expression was frozen on his face, and he remained motionless for a long time. Muyan couldn't help but push him, angrily saying, Jun Shongdaran, are you stupid? Or are you not satisfied with the answer? Mingju fiercely clasps her hand, his voice hoarse and urgent with a trace of panic. Yang, what you just said, say it again. I want to hear it again. Was he dreaming? Did Yang really admit that she liked him? Yang, say it again. Muyan fiercely flips over, pressing Mingju under her body. The two people's posture immediately turns into that of adoration on Mingju's body. She looked down at the man's handsome face, her slender fingers gently stroking the man's perfect abdominal muscles. She looked exactly like a female hooligan. Mingju, you're blabbering so much nonsense, do you not want to do it? Or could it be that Jun Shongdaran has lost too much blood and can no longer hold on? Mingju's eyes suddenly deepen, and the evil fire in his body suddenly flares up like a prairie fire. Not waiting for Mu Yang to say anything, he suddenly turns around and presses the girl's slender body under him again. As a man, he would never hear the word no. Jun Muyan. The man on top of her is practically gnashing his teeth. I'll let you know whether Ben Jun can do it or not. This woman actually dared to question his ability. He would definitely make her cry for mercy. Mu Yang really does regret it. She shouldn't have been so stupid as to deliberately tease an old man who hadn't had a woman for 1,000 years. She didn't even know how long they had been tormenting each other. Chapter 798. Vowing to prove to Mu Yang whether she can do it or not. It's unknown how long the sky has been dark, and how long it has been bright. The sky darkens once again, and the bright moon hangs high. Mu Yang has long been exhausted, falling asleep in Mingju's arms. Mingju lowers his head, his gaze tenderly and attentively gazing at the girl's sleeping face. He gently and dotingly kisses her sweet lips. The tenderness in his eyes seems to have exhausted all the tenderness and sweetness in his life. Suddenly, his brows wrinkle, a trace of confusion flashing through his eyes. In his memory, apart from Mu Yang, he has never fallen in love with any woman, nor has he had intimate contact with any woman. However, in the split second when his soul and Mu Yang's body joined together, an intermittent and fuzzy fragment flashes through his mind. It was in a dark cave. A beast-like man, and a young and tender girl. Blazing passion and panting, intertwined into the most erotic intertwining. At that moment, Mingju faintly feels that that man is him. No, impossible. He only likes Mu Yang. How could he have any connection with a woman other than Mu Yang? Mingju's eyes turn cold, then they fall on Mu Yang's body, once again turning into a bone-piercing tenderness. If I don't leave, you won't abandon me. Yang, this is what you said. Once I've caught you, I will never let you go again. Under Mingju's pressure, the thunderclouds in the sky finally slowly disperse. Han Yi anxiously looks at the sky. When he sees Ying Mai's figure slowly floating down from the sky, he suddenly lets out a sigh of relief. He flies over and takes her into his arms. Ying Mai's complexion is very pale, blood spills from the corners of her mouth, and her body is full of scars caused by the lightning burns. Han Yi looks at the thousands of holes on her body, his heart aching. Fool, what are you crying for? Ying Mai reveals a pale but disgusted smile. I didn't cry, you, a big man, actually shed tears? Don't you feel ashamed? Han Yi cautiously feeds Ying Mai the elixir, wiping his tears and saying, what face have I not lost in front of you? Ying Mai stares blankly as she listens, then she shows a faint smile. Idiot, I can't walk anymore. Can you carry me? Han Yi stares blankly. He promptly giggles and says, all right, little Ying I'll carry you on my back. It doesn't matter if I carry you for a lifetime. Their silhouettes overlapped in the darkness of the night as they slowly moved forward. Where are Jun Shong and Miss Jun? Are they all right? Han Yi shakes his head and says, Jun Shong has a blood contract with us. If something were to happen to Jun Shong, we would definitely be able to sense it. Since the blood contract is in good condition, that means Jun Shong is fine. Ying Mai frowned and said, no matter what, we still have to find Miss Jun and Little Master as soon as possible. I'm afraid that Miss Jun will get hurt. Han Yi listens to Ying Mai saying Miss Jun. There's a burst of jealousy in his heart. Why didn't Xiao Ying'er worry about him so much? The two of them returned to the rundown temple where the incident happened. As soon as he entered the rundown temple, he heard a series of indescribable sounds coming from inside. Han Yi takes a look inside, and is so shocked that his eyeballs almost fall out. He saw that Gong Qianxue was completely naked, her body covered with bruises. Just like that, she lies on top of a man's body, incessantly shaking moaning sounds coming from her mouth from time to time. Next to Gong Qianxue, there's an ugly man who's already dead and foaming at the mouth. Chapter 799. Jian Feng's pair of eyes tightly glares at the ugly woman on top of him, the corners of his mouth slowly hooking up into a cold smile. On the surface of Gong Qianxue's body, there's a red thread, following the release of her lust, constantly spreading over her body. It's almost already occupied every inch of her body's blood vessels and internal organs. However, Gong Qianxue doesn't feel anything, she's only crazily dominated by her lust. When she's aroused, she cries out and bends down, wanting to kiss Jian Feng. The next moment, however, a mournful wail comes out of her mouth. By the time she raises her head, blood is already gushing out of her mouth. Her tongue has actually been bitten off by Jian Feng. But Jian Feng still isn't willing to let her go. He rolls over and pounces on her, tearing off her nose, ears, and throat. Han Yi looks at this disgusting and cruel scene, but he only sneers and shakes his head. Carrying Ying Mai on his back, he turns around and leaves. Scum like Gong Qianxue and Jian Feng, killing each other like this, dying without an intact corpse is already the best ending. However, even if Jian Feng doesn't kill Gong Qianxue, she would still be corroded by the yin-yang evil energy, and be burned alive to ashes. In any case, they only have themselves to blame, no one else is to blame. It's more important for them to look for Jun Shong and the miss, in the cave. Xiao Bao slowly opens his eyes, his big watery eyes still carrying a trace of confusion. Suddenly, he abruptly sits up, his mouth shouting, Nyang Qin, bunny. In the next moment, a black shadow bumps into his bosom, making an awoo sound. Xiao Bao recognizes this voice. His delicate, grave and stern little face reveals a pleasantly surprised expression. Bunny, you're still alive, it's really too. Xiao Bao's voice comes to an abrupt halt. The big eyes blink, and blink again. The creature in his bosom has a pair of Mungbin eyes that are exactly the same as the fat bunny's. But, the originally snow-white fluffy long fur is all gone. Xiao Bao hesitantly looks at the bald lump in his bosom, asking uncertainly, are you bunny? Awoo. The bald-haired dumpling in his arms was infuriated. It opens its mouth and bites Xiao Bao's hand. Although it didn't break the skin of little Bao's hand, it still made him cry out in pain. A pair of Mungbin eyes looked up and glared at Xiao Bao, full of anger. Little master, of course I'm bunny. This rabbit only had a bit of fur burned off, yet you can't recognize this rabbit. Bastard, didn't this rabbit god have my beautiful fur burned off to save you? After roaring, the fat rabbit turned around sadly, wanting to jump down and hide in a corner. It was over, its beautiful fur was gone, it would become a bald rabbit in the future. It was no longer majestic, no longer handsome, sob. Seeing that the fat rabbit was about to jump away, Xiao Bao hurriedly reached out to hold it in his arms again. His usually cold childish voice carried a rare smile. Bun, it's great that you're fine. I was so worried about you. He lowered his head and rubbed the fat rabbit's body with all his might, not caring about its burnt bald and no longer cute body. Bun, don't worry. The fur on your body will definitely grow again. Enchantress said that you can grow faster if you eat a lot. In the future, when Daddy makes something delicious, I'll let you eat it, okay? Chapter 800. Xiao Bao looks around. But all he sees is an empty cave, and there's no sign of Mu Yang. Bunny, where's Enchantress? Why don't I see Enchantress? The fat rabbit howls. It's also very strange. Where did the female devil go? How could she leave Xiao Bao here alone? Xiao Bao's little face, which was originally happy to see that the fat rabbit was fine, suddenly collapses. His big clear eyes are filled with worry. Enchantress said that she would help us form a blood contract. Did something happen to Enchantress? No way, no way. Enchantress will definitely be fine. But Enchantress has never left him alone like this. Xiao Bao stands up. I'm going to find Enchantress. But then, a confused look appeared on his face. Where should he go to find Enchantress? Should he go back to Hellflame Valley? I know. Cho knows where pretty big sister is. A cute lowly voice suddenly emerges in Xiao Bao's mind. Then, there's a flash of light in the dark cave, and a small phoenix flies out from between Xiao Bao's eyebrows. This phoenix is fiery red, so beautiful that it makes people dazzled. However, it's only the size of 2 fists, and it's just an illusion. Feeling Xiao Bao's gaze, Cho flaps its wings and turns in a circle, saying excitedly, little big brother, look, Cho can transform into a phoenix spirit body. Isn't Cho beautiful, isn't it cute? Xiao Bao has never seen such a beautiful creature. That fiery red light is not dazzling, but warm. When the fire wings gently flap, you can see flowing lights and overflowing colors. Oh, it's a bit small. But the surprise only lasts for a moment, and Xiao Bao immediately says eagerly, you said you know where Enchantress is? Little Phoenix nods and says, because a very powerful force suddenly poured into you, little big brother, and Cho, as your contracted beast, also shared this power. So Cho can not only transform, but also split into a Fire Phoenix doppelganger. Fire Phoenix doppelganger? En. Cho shakes its beautiful little head with a proud look. Fire Phoenix doppelganger allows Cho to put a wisp of divine sense on a living creature. Then, as long as Cho wasn't too far away from the Fire Phoenix clone, Cho would be able to locate it. Even if it's very, very far away and Cho can't find it, it can still sense the living being's state that the Fire Phoenix's clone left behind. Little Treasure's eyes immediately lit up. You left the Fire Phoenix clone on Mother's body? Yes. Cho nodded. Then, he seemed to have thought of something, and his cute lowly voice was filled with anger. There were a few bad guys who wanted to harm Beautiful Sister. Beautiful Sister didn't have any strength to save Bunny. It was so dangerous. Cho is anxious to death, but there's nothing he can do. As Xiao Bao listened to Cho's narration, he suddenly clenched his fists. His eyes were wide open, filled with guilt, panic, and anxiety. Enchantress doesn't have any strength at all. It was all to save him, to help him save Bunny. It was all his fault for harming his mother. Chapter 801. Cho was worried about little big brother and didn't dare to follow, so he placed the Fire Phoenix doppelganger on Pretty Sister. As it spoke, Cho flapped its wings and landed on little Bao's shoulder. It grinned and said, little big brother, don't worry. Cho can feel that beautiful big sister is very well now. It's. Little Phoenix blinked, his big eyes flashing with shyness. She didn't know how to describe her beautiful sister's current state. Although it was blurry and did not feel real. But the moment she sensed it, she blushed and her heart raced. It was as if she had secretly drunk immortal wine a long, long time ago. Cho glanced at Little Treasure before turning her head back shyly. She didn't know how to tell little big brother. Xiao Bao, on the other hand, thinks that Mu Yang is in danger after all, or perhaps injured. His anxious voice rises a bit. Cho, do you know where Enchantress is right now? Take me there. Cho grunted, flapped its wings, and flew away. Xiao Bao hurriedly carried the fat rabbit and followed. The two of them walked along the Wuwang Mountains into the depths of the jungle. Little Gongzi, it's really you. Han Yi's pleasantly surprised voice suddenly comes from not too far away. You're all right, that's really great. Han Yi's feet are like the wind, carrying Ying Mai on his back as he quickly arrives in front of Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao looked at Ying Mai worriedly. Sister Ying Mai, are you hurt? Mother and Ying Mai Jejie, they were all trying to save him. When Ying Mai saw little Bao, his cold expression immediately softened. Young master, don't worry. I'm fine. I'm just a little exhausted. It was this idiot who insisted on carrying me. As she spoke, she was about to come down to prove that she was fine. But Han Yi wouldn't let go no matter what. Little shadow, I like to piggyback you, let me piggyback you, okay? I have great strength. Even if I carry you for a lifetime, I won't get tired. Ying Mai immediately blushes, slapping Han Yi's head. Idiot. Who wants you to carry it forever? Han Yi chuckles foolishly. But very quickly, he restrained his smile. Little Gongzi, do you know where Jun Shong and Miss are? Through their blood contracts, they could sense the general direction. But he couldn't find the exact location. Therefore, he had been wandering around here for a long time. I don't know, but Qiuqiu knows. Xiao Bao stretched out his hand, and Qiuqiu immediately stopped in his palm, proudly raising its chin. Seeing the beautiful and dazzling little phoenix, Han Yi and Ying Mai are simultaneously struck dumb. Heavens! This was the primordial spirit of the phoenix. The phoenix, that was the Nirvana god, the phoenix. Even in the Shoshian continent, the phoenix clan had long been extinct. Why did it appear here? Although the one before him was only a young phoenix, it was already astonishing enough. Moreover, why was the little phoenix with Xiao Bao, and why was it stained with Xiao Bao's aura? Could it be that it had formed a contract with Xiao Bao? Han Yi and Ying Mai are still in shock, but Xiao Bao doesn't have time to deal with them. He anxiously urges Qiuqiu to hurry and find his mother. Although the fire phoenix was small, it was extremely fast. About a quarter of an hour later, it stopped in front of a cave. Qiuqiu panted heavily as it turned its head and said, "Little big brother, it's here." But as he got closer and closer to the fire phoenix's clone, that shameful yet sweet feeling became clearer and clearer. Qiuqiu hesitated for a moment before continuing, "But right now, it's best." Chapter 802. Han Yi is also carrying Ying Mai on his back, hurriedly rushing inside. Jun Shong, Miss Jun, are you all right? Then, two adults, a child, and a bald rabbit rushed into the cave. Looking at the scene before them, all of them were dumbfounded. Immediately after, Di Mingju's murderous shout is heard. Scram. Holy shit. Han Yi carries Ying Mai on his back, scrambling to escape. He also brought Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit along with him. Tears flowed like a river in his heart. Why was he so unlucky? He actually broke in just like that and saw Jun Shong and Miss Muyan. Han Yi covers his face. He feels that he has just come out of the purgatory pool, and is about to go in again. Han Yi carries Xiao Bao outside. As the cold wind blew, she blinked her big eyes and frowned. His handsome and exquisite little face looked like it was about to freeze. He had seen his mother and Lecha sleeping together before, but why was it so different this time? Why does he always feel that Nyang Qin is going to be snatched away by a Lecha? Di Mingju looks at the already empty cave entrance. That sharp gaze seems to want to kill. In his arms, the girl's eyes were closed and she was wrapped tightly in his clothes. He was sleeping soundly. Occasionally, one could see traces of ambiguity on her snow-white shoulders. The commotion just now had awakened her from her deep sleep. Her long eyelashes fluttered and she slowly opened her eyes. A pair of rippling peach blossom eyes were like a bottomless abyss that could suck in one's soul. Muyan stretches, her voice is soft and husky with a seductive numbness. Di Mingju, I think I just heard Xiaobao's voice. Di Mingju promptly uses the clothes to wrap her up again, ensuring that not even a bit of spring scenery will be exposed. Only then does he suppress his restless desire. His face darkened, and he was about to say that she had misheard. Xiaobao's voice suddenly came from outside. Mother, mother. Muyan's eyes brighten at once, and she abruptly pushes Di Mingju away, about to stand up. Xiaobao, I'm here. However, just as he was about to stand up, he felt his body go limp and he nearly collapsed. Di Mingju promptly reaches out and scoops her into his arms, his tone doting. I told you not to move around. Mu Yang gives him an unfriendly look. Which bastard was it that made her so weak? Just at this moment, Xiaobao had already rushed in from outside and suddenly pounced into Mu Yang's embrace. Mother, mother, are you all right? His tiny arms hugged her tightly, and his entire head was buried in her bosom. His voice sounded as if he was about to cry at any moment. Mu Yang quickly hugged Xiaobao and said softly, Baby, don't worry. Nyangqin is fine. Look, isn't Nyangqin fine now? Xiaobao's small body trembles slightly. After a long while, he raises his head to look at Mu Yang. When he finds that his mother is indeed fine, without any weakness or injury, his big tearful eyes reveal a trace of a smile. Then he reaches out and hugs Mu Yan tightly. The mother and daughter pair are affectionate for a while, when Xiaobao seems to remember something. He fiercely glares at Di Mingju. Nyangqin, did this lecher bully you just now? Mu Yang blushes. Cough. She did bully him, but this was not bullying. How was she going to explain this to her son? Chapter 803. Ben Jun's wife. Of course, Ben Jun has priority. Xiaobao glares at him. You bullied Nyangqin, I just saw it all. Di Mingju's deep eyes look at Mu Yan. Those eyes contain a blazing desire, making Mu Yan's blushing face seem to burn. This bastard. What was the meaning of that blatant look in his eyes? The next moment, she sees Di Mingju turn to Xiaobao and reveal a meaningful smile. Ben Jun will bully Yang Yang like this for the rest of his life, and only Yang Yang alone. What? Do you have a problem with that? Shouxian Continent, Tianyi Men. Listening to the maid's narration, Leng Qingwan suddenly stands up from her seat, saying in disbelief, Yanwu Continent, you said that the Shun musician remnant that seduced Di Jun isn't in the Shouxian Continent, but in the Yanwu Continent. How is that possible? Yanwu Continent, what kind of place is that? It's a barren continent without any spiritual energy, a place where Leng Qingwan and the others look down upon the most, a place where mortals gather like trash. What kind of lofty status does Di Mingju have? How could he fancy a mortal woman? What's more, how could the Shun musician clan that once struck terror into the three realms leave their inheritance in the lowest Yanwu continent? The maid Furong says, this subordinate heard from Gong Qianxue, who also came from the Yanwu continent, that this Shun musician remnant called Mu Yan has a very seductive appearance, and is extremely skillful. I'm afraid that Jun Shong has also been bewitched by that woman. However, young master can rest assured. Furong faintly smiles, her face carrying a bit of pride. This subordinate has already let Gong Qianxue bring back the yin-yang sho, and put it on Mu Yan. This subordinate just sensed that the yin-yang sho has indeed been activated. Leng Qingwan's expression converges a bit, her gaze cold. Are you sure that the yin-yang sho has been placed on this Shun musician remnant? Furong chuckles. The yin-yang sho that this subordinate gave to Gong Qianxue was specially tampered with. It would only react to the highest level of blood and soul. If that Mu Yan wasn't a Shun musician remnant, the yin-yang sho wouldn't be able to parasitize a mere mortal of the Yanwu continent. It would only burn all the creatures present, and then return to my Tianyi Men. But now, the yin-yang baleful energy has been activated. Hearing Furong's resolute and decisive reply, Leng Qingwan's beautiful face finally revealed a trace of a smile. However, this smile was filled with intense jealousy and cruelty. Hibiscus, you did very well. Leng Qingwan unhurriedly says, as long as we can confirm that the remnant of the Shun musician has been hit by the yin-yang evil qi, she will certainly be consigned to eternal damnation. Furong also smiled with a flattering expression. As long as one is affected by the yin-yang sho, it's like being affected by the most potent drug in the world. Even a chaste woman can't resist the desire for sex. But it just so happened that unless the man she had intercourse with had divine power, She would only endlessly desire and endlessly feel the pain of being burned by the raging fire until even her blood and soul were completely burned by the yin-yang baleful qi. Chapter 804. Let me ask you, how can such a lowly woman compare to the purity that young master has in the heart of the imperial monarch? At that time, the emperor will definitely recognize your goodness and grandly marry you as the extreme domain's divine empress. The corner of Lung Qingwan's mouth hooked up into a prideful and cheerful smile. What kind of lowly Tom, Dick, or Harry is that? You actually dare to compare him to me? It's this subordinate's fault. This subordinate's fault. Furong pretends to hit herself, smiling as she flatters, young master, you are the bright moon in the sky, that Jun Muyin is like a mouse in the gutter, she's not even fit to carry your shoes. However, the Shun musician inheritance on that Jun Muyin, young master must obtain it in his hands. After another 2 days, when the yin-yang sho absorbs enough profound qi, this subordinate will be able to sense its exact location. At that time, the emperor will be yours, and the inheritance of the Shun musicians will also be yours. Lung Qingwan's eyes shone brilliantly, as if she could already see the day when she would become the mother of the world. She looked at Hibiscus with satisfaction. This time, your contribution is not small. It's time for you to improve your cultivation and level. Tomorrow, I will tell Master to bestow upon you the unique, Wuji pill of our sect. Hibiscus was simply wild with joy when she heard this. The limitless pill was one of the most precious pills of the Tianyi men. As long as she took one, she would be able to break through her current bottleneck and advance a level. In the Tianyi men, her innate talent and cultivation were not considered good. Even in the inner sect, she was only an existence at the bottom. She was only able to become Lung Qingwan's personal maidservant by relying on her ability to guess his intentions and flatter him. The other confidants around Lung Qingwan all looked down on her. Furong proudly swept her gaze over the people behind Lung Qingwan, her face revealing a mocking and smug smile. So what if these people were stronger than her? If he didn't have the ability to come up with a plan for the young master and solve the problem, he was just a piece of trash. On the other hand, with this contribution, her cultivation would soon be on par with theirs. Moreover, once the young lord marries into the polar domain and becomes the divine empress, she might even be able to marry over as a concubine and become the emperor's concubine. When she thought of the emperor's peerless dignity and handsome appearance, Hibiscus's expression became intoxicated and infatuated. Furong was happy, but the other maids behind Lung Qingwan all revealed indignant expressions as they stared at Furong unwillingly. Suddenly, one of the maids stepped forward and saluted Lung Qingwan. Young master, this subordinate has something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Speak. The solution to yin-yang balefire is to find a man with divine power, and a god monarch is someone with divine power. As soon as these words were spoken, the hall fell into a deathly silence. Lung Qingwan's complexion slowly turned from joyful and carefree to white. Linglan, don't talk nonsense. Hibiscus's voice is sharp, almost roaring. Even if Di Jun became acquainted with that Shun musician remnant in the Yenwu continent, it was definitely a divine soul avatar that descended into a different world. An Emperor Lord's divine soul avatar is naturally extremely powerful, but it doesn't possess any divine power at all. How can it help that bitch resolve the yin-yang baleful aura? Moreover, according to the news from the polar domain, Di Jun is clearly in seclusion. Linglan doesn't pay attention to Hibiscus. Instead, she looks at Lung Qingwan. Young master, don't you think that Di Jun has been in seclusion for too long in this 1 year? Chapter 805. Hibiscus vigorously shakes her head and says, Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Young master, don't listen to Linglan's nonsense. Even if Di Jun was bewitched by that slut, it's impossible for his real body to descend to the barren Yenwu continent. He is the king of the polar domain, in charge of nearly half of the Shoshen continent. If people knew that his real body had descended to the Yenwu continent, then the consequences. That's right. As the king of the polar domain, how could he let his real body leave the Shoshen continent? Moreover, He had to go to that barren and isolated Yenwu continent. Not to mention the erosion of the Yenwu continent's barren land and the restrictions of heavenly law. Even if Di Jun wanted to come back, he would need to spend a lot of effort. Has Di Jun gone crazy? For a woman, he doesn't even care about his own safety, the survival of the polar domain. Hibiscus's words slowly settle Lung Qingwan's heart. That's right, Di Jun couldn't do that. He just happened to go to the Yenwu continent, but he was seduced by that slut. Since that woman is a remnant of the Shun musicians, she naturally has a lot of tricks up her sleeve. Lung Qingwan has heard Master Lung Yuexia talk about those past events many times. At that time, Lung Yuexia's fiancé had his soul hooked by a lowly maid from the Shun music sect. He went as far as to break off the engagement with her master, causing her to become the laughingstock of the entire Xiuxian continent. Now, an insignificant lowly mortal of the Yenwu continent actually wants to steal her, Lung Qingwan's man? Simply dreaming. Thinking like this, Lung Qingwan's eyes reveal a thick murderous intent. After confirming the position of that remnant of the Shun musician, she will immediately rush over and dismember her corpse into 10,000 pieces. Just then, Hibiscus's complexion suddenly changes. Clutching her chest, she falls to her knees. Her complexion becomes increasingly pale, then she suddenly spits out a mouthful of blood. Within the blood she sprays, there's a small red bug squirming violently. But it looks like it's in extreme pain. The next moment, she sees an ice blue flame emitting from the bug, burning it to ashes. The main hall once again falls into a deathly silence. Hibiscus clutches her still aching chest. She blankly stares at the yin-yang demon that has already been burned to ashes, her face filled with horror and disbelief. Little by little, Lung Qingwan's expression changed from arrogant, cold, and murderous, to shock, and then to hysterical rage. Even Ling Lan and the others were no longer in the mood to ridicule and ostracize Hibiscus. They stared blankly at the ashes on the ground, not even daring to breathe too loudly. Impossible, this is impossible. How is this possible? What she had just spat out was the mother Jiyu of the yin-yang sho. Mother Jiyu self-immolated, in other words, those child Jiyu that were placed on Jun Muyan's body died, all of them were burnt to ashes. Logically speaking, even if someone could dispel the yin-yang baleful qi and incinerate the child Jiyu. But it wouldn't affect the mother Jiyu too much. Unless the energy that burned the child Jiyu was so strong that even the mother Jiyu was implicated and destroyed. But who could be so powerful? Furong knelt in front of Lung Qingwan and shouted loudly, young master, this is impossible, it's definitely not Di Jun. There are many people in the world who possess divine power, and there is more than one way to resolve the yin-yang sho. That is definitely not an emperor. Smack. He ruthlessly slapped Hibiscus's face, sending her flying away. Chapter 806. Lying on the ground for a long time, she can't get up. Lung Qingwan glares at her fiercely, as if she wants to dismember her body. You really did a good job. After saying that, she brushes her sleeves and leaves. Ling Lan and the others quickly follow, leaving Furong alone on the ground, moaning and crying in pain. Lung Qingwan walks out of the hall, but her face is still livid, her expression is as fierce as a ghost. Ling Lan steps forward to persuade her, but she is shocked by her appearance. After a long time, she says, young master, Furong is right, Di Jun isn't the only one with godly power in this world. Moreover, Di Jun has always been in closed-door meditation, everyone in the polar domain knows. Lung Qingwan grits her teeth, her eyes reveal ruthlessness, and her figure suddenly turns into smoke, disappearing. Soon, she arrives at the mountains and rivers of the polar domain. When old Ji learns of her arrival, he quickly and attentively greets her. Qingwan Fairy, why are you here? Old Ji, I want to see Di Jun this. Old Ji hesitates. Di Jun is in closed-door meditation, he ordered that he won't see anyone. Lung Qingwan's eyes suddenly redden, the usually cold and arrogant fairy is suddenly infected with a trace of pitiful grievance and sadness. Old Ji, does Di Jun not like Qingwan, and wants to marry another woman? Old Ji has always regarded her as the future mistress of the polar domain, So he quickly says, "How could that be? Di Jun is just cold and cheerless, but to Qingwan Fairy, he definitely has feelings for you." "Then let me see the monarch. I really miss the monarch." Lung Qingwan has always presented herself as an aloof and proud ice beauty. Even if she admires Mingju, she has never shown her feminine side. Now, seeing her say that she misses Di Jun so sorrowfully, not to mention old Ji, even the subordinates behind him can't bear it. Old Ji sighs in his heart. How did Jun Shong lose his mind? Fairy Qingwan is such a virtuous and noble wife, he didn't want her, and was actually seduced by a mortal woman from the lower realm. Seeing Lung Qingwan's eyes are full of tears, her figure is thin, but she is forcing herself not to cry. Old Ji is finally moved. He waved his hand and dismissed his subordinates. Only then did he say to Lung Qingwan, "Fairy Qingwan, to tell you the truth, Jun Shong is currently not in the polar domain." Lung Qingwan's breathing suddenly became heavier, her hands hanging by her side tightly clenched into fists. After suppressing herself for a long time, she finally asked in a normal tone, "Not in the polar domain? Where is the Emperor?" "The Emperor, he went to another world to train." "Training? Is Di Jun a cultivator from the cultivation continent?" Lung Qingwan asked with the last trace of hope. Elder Ji's expression was grave. After a long time, he finally said, "This matter concerns the polar domain's secret. I ask Fairy Qingwan to keep it a secret." In old Ji's heart, Lung Qingwan is the future mistress of the polar domain, and Di Mingju's official wife. Naturally, he wouldn't harm Di Mingju. After receiving Lung Qingwan's assurance, he says, "Di Jun, his body is currently in the Yenwu continent." Hearing Elder Ji's words, Lung Qingwan felt her vision go black and she almost fainted. Di Jun is in Yenwu continent, he's really in Yenwu continent. So, the one who dispelled the yin-yang evil energy for that slut, was it really Di Jun? As soon as she thinks of Di Jun and that slut's intimate entanglement, their frank embrace, Lung Qingwan hates them so much that she wants to go crazy. No. It can't be like this, it definitely can't be like this. Even if Di Jun really is with that slut. Chapter 807. Di Jun is such a aloof and remote man, a cold and aloof man. In the entire Shoshian continent, how many women want to become Di Jun's pillow, but Di Jun doesn't even let them get close. How could such an emperor fall in love with a lowly mortal? It must be that woman who is desperately pestering Di Jun, it must be that slut Jun Muyan who shamelessly seduced Di Jun. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. That slut actually dared to defile Di Jun, dared to steal her, Lung Qingwan's man. At this very moment, Lung Qingwan really wants to kill someone. But she really wants to confirm it with her own eyes. She wants to confirm that Di Mingju doesn't love Jun Muyan, that Jun Muyan is shamelessly pestering him, that Jun Muyan used a despicable and shameless method to confuse Di Jun. She wants to see Di Jun loathe and despise Jun Muyan, not letting her get close. Just like how Di Jun loathes other women in the Shoshian continent. With great difficulty, Lung Qingwan hides her ferocious and resentful face. When she raises her head, it has already turned into a shy and urgent longing. Old Ji, Qingwan really wants to see Di Jun, even if it's just a glance from afar. Lung Qingwan is very clear. If Di Mingju's body wants to go to the Yenwu continent from the Shoshan world, he inevitably needs a spatial, holy object, as a medium. And the spatial, holy object, in the polar domain is precisely the Qiankuan mirror. Through the Qiankuan mirror, you can see everything that's happening around Di Mingju. This absolutely won't do. Old Ji repeatedly shakes his head. The Qiankuan mirror is my polar domain's most precious treasure. What's more, before Di Jun went down, he instructed us to absolutely not let anyone spy on his whereabouts. If Di Jun were to find out, it would be a great crime. I am Di Jun's future wife. Lung Qingwan raises her chin, revealing an arrogant expression. If Di Jun were to really find out, old Ji, you can push the blame onto Qingwan. Even if Di Jun were to punish anyone, he would never bear to punish me. This. Old Ji shows a hesitant expression. Ling Lan coughs softly beside Lung Qingwan. Old Ji, our young master has always remembered your affection and help towards our young master. In the future, when our young master becomes the sect master of Tianyi men and becomes the mistress of the domain, she will certainly not forget your kindness. Old Ji's expression became more and more hesitant. Ling Lan persisted, a meaningful smile appearing on her face. Now in the polar domain, Elder Ji, although you can be considered the Emperor's trusted aide, your status is still inferior to Elder Chang's. Your son is obviously talented and powerful, but he can't even become the leader of the Imperial Guard. Instead, he has to work for a little kid like Ying Mai. Ling Lan's words caused embarrassment to flash across Old Ji's face. But if our young master becomes the mistress of the polar domain, then it will be completely different. Ling Lan chuckled. Our young master knows how to make good use of people. How could a lowly brat like Ying Mai be qualified to follow the emperor? How could he be qualified to be the leader of the Imperial Guard? At that time, young master will definitely reorganize the polar domain and give the most capable people the important positions. Elder Ji's expression changed. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, this old man will bring Fairy Qingwan to see Juanshang. However, you must promise me that you will never get close to the heaven and earth mirror. You can only watch from afar. Otherwise, the God Monarch will find out immediately." Chapter 808. She absolutely doesn't believe that Di Jun would really like a lowly mortal. She must see with her own eyes, see how Di Jun dislikes this foxy woman who seduces him. As a sacred object of the polar domain, the Qiankuan mirror is naturally kept in an extremely secret place. Old Ji takes Lung Qingwan all the way forward, and soon they arrive outside a quiet palace. The guard outside the palace stops Old Ji. Old Ji doesn't say anything, but takes out an ID card and makes a complicated seal with both hands in the air. Lung Qingwan stands on the side, staring at the seal without blinking, her eyes deep and bottomless. After the seal is formed, the palace gate slowly opens, and the guard respectfully retreats to the side. Lung Qingwan follows Old Ji inside, and soon sees the sacred object, Qiankuan mirror, placed in the center of the hall. A powerful force hits her in the face. It makes Lung Qingwan shiver, and her face becomes a little pale. Old Ji raises his hand, and an invisible barrier shrouds her. His voice is gentle. The pressure of the Qiankuan mirror is very strong. "Qingwan Fairy, be careful." Lung Qingwan takes a deep breath, and the spiritual energy in her body revolves, and soon her face returns to normal. Old Ji shows an expression of appreciation. With Lung Qingwan's age, to have such cultivation and talent, and also have the support of the entire Tianyi men, she is truly the only woman who can match up with Juanshang. Old Ji looks at the Qiankuan mirror, and his hands quickly make a seal. An extremely complicated seal is formed, and the originally dark Qiankuan mirror shines with a dazzling light. Immediately afterwards, the bronze mirror ripples like water, and gradually shows a picture. In the picture, the first thing that is printed is Di Mingju's incomparably handsome face. Juanshang's appearance is still grave and stern, dignified, and aloof. However, seeing Di Mingju's movements in the picture, Old Ji is dumbfounded. This, what is Juanshang doing? Why is he standing in front of the stove? Why is he cutting vegetables? Why is he wearing a ridiculous apron? Wait a minute. Is this really their supreme Di Jun? Old Ji can't help but wipe his eyes, and then suddenly turns to look at Lung Qingwan beside him. He wanted to explain to Fairy Qingwan that their monarch's supreme dignity was awe-inspiring and inviolable. However, when he turns his head, he sees Lung Qingwan stupidly staring at Di Mingju's handsome face, her eyes filled with worship and infatuation. Old Ji stroked his beard and nodded in satisfaction. However, at this moment, Lung Qingwan's expression suddenly changed. Her originally cold and peerless face twisted in an instant, becoming incomparably ferocious. Disbelief, shock, and bone-deep jealousy rose from her eyes. Old Man Ji was stunned. He turned around and was stunned once again when he saw the scene in the heaven and earth mirror. Lung Qingwan, on the other hand, stared fixedly at the scene in the copper mirror, her body trembling slightly because of extreme anger. In the heaven and earth mirror, the high and mighty man seemed to have heard something and turned around. A trace of bone-chilling gentleness appeared on his stern face. In front of him, a young girl in green leisurely walked over. The image in the heaven and earth mirror was blurry, but one could see that the girl had an unparalleled beauty and a pair of peach blossom eyes that seemed capable of seducing one's soul. Jun Muyan. This woman is Jun Muyan. Chapter 809. Seeing Muyan approaching, Di Mingju opens his arms, wanting to pull her into his embrace. But who would have thought that Muyan would reveal a sly smile, bending down to slip under his arms. Her target, the delicious food that has just come out of the pot. Di Mingju's complexion darkens all of a sudden. He grabs her, presses her to the side of the stove, and kisses her directly. Beside the smoke-stained stove, a tall and handsome man presses down on a beautiful and slender girl, kissing her with desire and tenderness. This scene is so beautiful. So beautiful that it makes people wish that time would stop at this moment, never to flow again. But this scene, in Lung Qingwan's eyes, makes her hate it so much that she can't breathe. Her hands are tightly clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms, digging into her flesh, but she doesn't feel anything. At that moment, Lung Qingwan's hatred is even more insane than when she found out that Di Mingju helped Muyan remove the yin-yang sha. She originally thought that even if Muyan, this slut, seduced Di Mingju and used a shameless trick to climb into his bed. With Di Mingju's callous nature, he would never say anything nice to her. That's because Di Jun has always been like this to her, to everyone else. But the scene before her subverts all of Lung Qingwan's imagination and hopes. It also makes her feel that her pride and self-esteem are being trampled underfoot, ruthlessly trampled. Di Jun is actually so gentle to this slut, so intimate, so affectionate. Could it be that Di Jun has really fallen in love with this Shen musician remnant? He even wants to give her the position of Polar Domain's mistress? No. No. Absolutely not. Bang. Lung Qingwan doesn't even look at old Ji. She directly slams open the door and rushes out. Unfortunately, old Ji seems to be in a daze, looking at the scene in the Chenkuan mirror. He doesn't even notice that Lung Qingwan has left. He has never seen Di Jun show such an expression ever since those unforeseen events that happened in his childhood. Gentle, peaceful, and happy. Old Ji is a little silly, muttering, Di Jun, do you really like this mortal woman that much? On the way back to Tianyi Men, Lung Qingwan makes Ling Lan and the others not dare to breathe heavily. As soon as she returns to Tianyi Men, Lung Qingwan smashes everything in the room. Ling Lan and the others went up to dissuade her, but she used them as a punching bag and whipped them more than a dozen times until their bodies were badly mangled. After tossing and turning for a long time, Lung Qingwan finally calmed down her violent mood and sat on her seat with a gloomy face. Ling Lan and the others walked forward with trepidation and whispered, "Young master, why don't we report this to the headmaster?" Although the marriage agreement between the Polar Domain and the Tianyi Men did not have a contract, both parties were well aware of it. It's too much for the emperor to humiliate you like this. If you tell the sect master, he will definitely seek justice for you. The sect master of the Tianyi Men, Leng Yuexia, has been injured since the last time Di Mingju destroyed the Great Mountain Protecting Array and killed her disciples in front of them. She's been in closed-door meditation all this time. Lung Qingwan takes a deep breath and shakes her head. No, I must deal with that slut Jun Muyan myself. She was going to tear that slut to shred. But Ling Lan hesitated. The monarch is by that woman's side. If we make a move, I'm afraid that the monarch, then just let Di Jun return from the Yenwu continent. Lung Qingwan laughs coldly. Chapter 810. Lung Qingwan raises her head, her eyes dark and grim, like a bottomless abyss. Go now and secretly release the news that Di Jun's body is in the Yenwu continent to that group of people in the Polar Domain's Zijin Palace. I believe that Mo Rufeng and the others will definitely know how to seize this opportunity. Hearing that, Ling Lan suddenly widens her eyes, saying in disbelief, "Young master, if this news is released, the polar domain will inevitably be in chaos, Di Jun may even be in danger." She hasn't finished speaking when Lung Qingwan's cold gaze sweeps over. Ling Lan immediately closes her mouth. Lung Qingwan sneers, "If he can't belong to me, then I might as well destroy him." Even if she herself can't marry Di Mingju, she will never let that Shun musician remnant get everything that should belong to her. What's more, Di Jun has been the polar domain's king for so long. Do you think that Mo Rufeng and that group of wastes can really overthrow Di Jun? I'm just using them to let Di Jun leave that slut's side. Ling Lan immediately nods, "Yes, young master. This subordinate will do it at once." Wait a minute. Lung Qingwan calls her back, takes out a jade slip, and carves down the talisman array that old Ji had just arranged outside the Chenkuan Mirror Palace. She hands it to Ling Lan, "Give this to Mo Rufeng as well. Remember, you must not let anyone know that this matter is related to my Tianyi men." Ling Lan bows and leaves. Lung Qingwan sits in the same place. The image of Di Mingju embracing and kissing Jun Muyan unconsciously emerges in her mind. She tightly clenches her teeth, her eyes red. "Jun Muyan, just you wait. Very soon, your time of death will come. Anyone who wants to snatch something from her, Lung Qingwan, will not have a good end." The former Liu Se and her fellow apprentice were like this, and now Jun Muyan is also like this. Di Mingju, the position of Polar Domain's mistress, is destined to be hers. Yanwu Continent, Netherflame Valley's dining hall. Muyan originally wanted to tease the especially cute Jun Shongdaran who is wearing an apron. She didn't expect to go for wool and come home shorn. She was pressed against the stove and severely punished. Di Mingju takes a long time before releasing her red and swollen lips. He presses her into his arms, calming his turbulent desire. His chest heaved up and down as he gasped for breath. The voice that comes out is even more unbelievably hoarse. "Yang, you're teasing Ben Jun like this. Do you want to try it with Ben Jun in the kitchen?" Mu Yang angrily covers Di Mingju's mouth to stop him from continuing. This bastard was getting more and more shameless. In the beginning, she was so innocent that she didn't even know how to kiss. But now, he was not afraid of vulgar things and dared to say anything. Di Mingju takes her hand and presses it to his lips to kiss it. He felt a little regretful, but he really wanted to give it a try here. It was a pity that the dining hall was so crowded. In his mind, he was thinking that in the future, he and Mu Yang's bedroom should naturally have a big dining hall, a big bathing pool, and a big veranda. Thinking about it, Di Mingju only feels that his body is a little hot, and all the blood in his body seems to be rushing to one place. Just as Muyan is about to say something, her body suddenly soars into the air, and Di Mingju carries her horizontally in his arms. Startled, she hurriedly wrapped her arms around the man's neck. She hears the man's hoarse voice in her ears, "Yang, Ben Jun is hungry. If you're hungry, then eat." Chapter 8-11. I have to say, Jun Shongdaran's cooking skills are getting better and better. However, before Mu Yang could open her mouth, she suddenly realized what the man meant and blushed. This bastard. As soon as she raises her head, she comes face to face with Jun Shongdaran's resentful expression. Yang, count it yourself. How many days has that little bastard been forcibly occupying you? Ever since they came back from the cave that day, Xiao Bao has been like a little dragon guarding a treasure, sticking to Mu Yang all day long. Of course, the most important thing isn't to fight for favor with Di Mingju. But this time, Xiao Bao was really frightened. Regardless of whether it was the fat rabbit or his mother, they were both seriously injured because of him. In fact, it almost left him. In Xiao Bao's short life, he had never truly experienced what it meant to be parted by death. This time, although he was unconscious most of the time, he was not completely unaware. It was precisely because of this hazy despair that he felt even more fearful and insecure. He seems to have returned to his childhood, when he needed Muyan to hug him tightly to sleep. As long as he can't feel Muyan's breath, he will be flustered, even shivering in his sleep. Mu Yang naturally felt extremely distressed for her son, so she let him act coquettishly without any bottom line. As a result, our pitiful Jun Shongdaran has just started eating meat, and it's the time when he's the most hungry. Yet, his wife has been forcibly taken away by his son. Unfortunately, he can't just throw this little bastard out, or teach him a lesson. That's because Di Mingju's heart couldn't help but soften when he meets Xiao Bao's big eyes, which are very similar to his own. Shuffling footsteps could be heard from outside the dining hall. From time to time, he could even hear Xiao Bao saying, "Is Nyangqin here?" Di Mingju's expression becomes more and more gloomy and resentful. Mu Yang looks at the handsome side profile of the man who is like a child in a fit of pique, and her heart becomes unreasonably soft for a moment. Hearing the footsteps and voices getting closer, Di Mingju accepts his fate and puts Muyan down. Just as he's about to let go, Muyan suddenly turns around and grabs his collar. Di Mingju stares blankly. Before he could react, the scenery in front of him suddenly turns upside down. The two figures appeared in the space. Di Mingju still hasn't come back to his senses, looking at Muyan somewhat lifelessly. Looking at the man's appearance, Mu Yang felt that he was indescribably cute. She couldn't help but tiptoe and kiss him on the lips. Di Mingju's eyes darken all of a sudden. "Xiao Bao is calling you outside." "Yeah, I heard you." Mu Yang grinned. "But I think Big Darling needs my company more now." Who was the big treasure? Di Mingju's complexion stiffens. He is very indignant that a dignified monarch like him is called a big treasure. He didn't want face. Di Mingju wants to express his protest, but his body and the surging sweetness and shyness in his heart honestly betray him. Suddenly, Muyan moves closer to him and leans against his face. Beaming, she says, "How strange, I actually saw Jun Shongdaran's face turn red." "Darling, you're so shy." Di Mingju can't bear it anymore, and he pulls the girl into his arms. His large hands unstoppably pushed open her clothes and caressed the young girl's soft, white skin. The intimate touch made the two of them let out a sigh that sounded like both pleasure and pain. Di Mingju looks at the girl he longs for day and night in his arms, longing for her to the point of almost going crazy. Little by little, his eyes become bottomless, and then ignite a little bit of prairie fire. Chapter 8:12. Muyan stares blankly. Before she could react, her lips and tongue are already blocked, and she's pressed down on the soft grass. By the time she realizes what Di Mingju is talking about, her face immediately flushes red. She's so angry and ashamed that she can't kick the person on top of her. Very well, she wouldn't dare to call a certain someone Big Darling anymore. Outside the space, Xiao Bao carries the fat rabbit to the dining hall. He sees a table full of food, but he doesn't see Mu Yang and Di Mingju. He can't help but wonder, "Bunny, where are mother and father? I clearly heard Sister Yingmai say that they were here. And why can't we enter mother's space?" The fat rabbit whimpered, yawned, and turned around. Was there even a need to ask? Of course, the she-devil and great demon king were working hard to make dolls. "Little master, don't you want a younger sister?" I might be able to fulfill my wish very soon." Although Mu Yang and Xiao Bao returned safely from the last battle at the Wuwang Mountains, the Ink Camp lost quite a few elites. These people originally came from Wan Renku and followed Muyan all the way. When they died, they had no parents, no wives, and no children. Therefore, Muyan orders people to erect a stone tablet in the center of Hellfire Valley. On the stone tablet, these people were engraved, as well as the names of the Nether Flame Army soldiers who had died in the Battle of Qiandao Sect. Mu Yang looked at the densely packed crowd standing in the square of Hellflame Valley and said in a deep voice, "In the future, you can forget Hellflame Valley, forget Jun Mu Yang and Jun Morchen. You can forget everything, but you must never forget the names of these brothers. Even if there comes a day when all of you leave the Yenwu continent and go to the Shozhen continent, or even the wider world, you must firmly engrave these names in your minds. Because these names and the survivors formed the soul of the Nether Flame Army. When they heard Mu Yan's first sentence, everyone in the square showed a pained and resolute expression. But when they heard the last sentence, most of them were dumbfounded. For a moment, the square fell into a dead silence. Following that, loud discussions broke out one after another. What did Miss mean by that? Leave the Yenwu continent and go to the Shozhen continent? Could it be that we can all leave Yenwu continent? How is this possible? There are very few people who can ascend from the Yenwu continent to the Shozhen continent. Look at the Tiandao sect, there are so many Xiantian elders, but not a single one has ascended in hundreds of years. They can't even pass the lightning tribulation, but I heard that even our leader obtained a miraculous pill refined by Miss. After consuming it, he would be able to mold his spirit root and ascend to the cultivation continent. Ari, just how precious is that pill? How could it be our turn? The sounds of chattering could be heard continuously. Unruffled and unruffled, Mu Yan sits on top and plays the zither, not paying attention to their excitement. She was playing a comforting song, hoping that the souls of the Nether Flame Army could follow the guidance of the zither and find peace. Xiaobao knelt in front of the stone tablet and respectfully kowtowed. He knew that it was these people's sacrifice that allowed him and the fat rabbit to survive. After kowtowing, Xiaobao stood up and walked to the center of the square. He raised his voice and said, "Silence." His childish voice didn't carry any pressure or deterrence. However, these two short words caused the nearly 10,000 people in the square to fall completely silent. Chapter 8:13. Mu Yang looked at this scene and smiled lightly. Even Di Mingju, who was standing at the side, showed a barely satisfied expression. Chumph, he was Di Mingju's son. If he didn't even have this bit of dignity, wouldn't he be ashamed to death? Xiao Bao's gaze swept across everyone and slowly said, 3 days later, the Nether Flame Army will hold a competition. The people of the Nether Flame Army in the square did not reveal a surprised expression. They had long heard from the captain and commander that the Nether Flame Army might hold a competition. And the result of this competition would be the turning point of their destiny, so they must grasp this opportunity well. So during this period of time, the 4 divisions of the Nether Flame Army had been training crazily every day, but they were also wondering what the turning point of their destiny was. And today, they finally got the answer from the mouth of the little master. Mother has refined a kind of elixir called Spirit Molding Pill. After taking the Spirit Molding Pill, it can forcefully stimulate the spirit root in one's body. Even if one only has a trace of spiritual cultivation talent, it can also stimulate the spirit root. After possessing the spirit root, one can ascend to the Shozhen continent even without experiencing the Thunder Tribulation. In the competition, the top 300 of each division will receive a spirit molding pill. Whoosh! This time, the entire square really burst into an uproar. Heavens! The reward for the top 300 was actually a spirit molding pill. It was actually a spirit molding pill. Could it be that they could really follow the commander and Miss to ascend to the Shozhen continent? Xiao Bao cleared his throat and let them all quiet down. Then he continued, those ranked after 300, but whose strength and efforts have obtained the commander's recognition, will receive the spirit-raising pill. Its effect is not as outstanding as the spirit molding pill, but there is a certain chance of molding the spirit root. As soon as these words came out, those who were dejected because of their weaker strength immediately became spirited again. Even if the effect of the spirit-raising pill was not as good as the spirit molding pill, at least there was still hope, right? And that meant that they were not abandoned by the Miss and Little Master. In fact, Mu Yang only refined 1,000 spirit molding pills because there was nothing she could do about it. It was not easy to refine the spirit molding pill, and the materials were precious. To be able to refine 1,000 pills was already the result of her exhausting her spirit power every day. Later on, Di Mingju couldn't bear to watch her torment herself like this, but he couldn't dissuade her, so he could only give her the recipe for the raising spirit pill. However, after going all out to refine the spirit molding pill, during this period of time, Mu Yang's cloud birthsea Skill had risen by leaps and bounds. In the past, he could only refine 3 to 5 pills at a time, and he would have to rest for a while before he could continue refining. But now, a furnace can produce dozens of pills, and the quality of each pill can make an alchemist of Genfeng's level feel ashamed and want to die. Long live the young miss, long live the young master, someone shouted and knelt down. Following that, everyone in the square began to kneel one by one. Nearly 10,000 people shouted, "Long live His Majesty." That tsunami-like formation shook the heavens and the earth. In the center of the square, Yang Haotian, Yu Yang, Feng Haitang, and Bai Chen stood around Xiao Bao. They couldn't help but look at each other, and their eyes revealed an expression of joy. All of them had a bleak and unbearable past. Fortunately, they were lucky enough to meet the young miss, each other, and this group of brothers. Chapter 8:14. Mu Yang can't stand this kind of scene. Seeing that everyone has knelt down, she puts away the Tianmo Qin and turns around to leave. As soon as Xiao Bao saw that his mother had left, he didn't even bother to ask them to get up. He strode forward with his short legs and followed her. Behind him was a bald rabbit and an unbelievably beautiful red bird. Xiao Bao pounces into Mu Yang's arms all of a sudden, struggling to move Di Mingju's hand away from Mu Yang. "You've already occupied mother for a long time. Today, it's my turn. Brat, your mother was originally mine. Do you still want a sister? Then give it to my sister now." He had wanted his soft and cute sister for a long time. Di Mingju smiles faintly, moving closer to Mu Yan's ear and saying, "Yang Yang, you see, Xiao Bao said that he wants a little sister, shouldn't we work harder?" Mu Yan gives him a blank look, picks up Xiao Bao, and ignores this thick-skinned man. A man's deep voice suddenly comes to her ears. "Yang Yang, before you give birth to your sister, shouldn't we have a wedding?" Mu Yan's footsteps halt, and she turns to look at Di Mingju. Her expression is somewhat complicated. Have you really thought it through? The Polar Domain's sovereign emperor, with such a lofty status, wanted to marry a mortal from a lowly world like her. Di Mingju grabs Xiao Bao by the collar and throws him aside. Surprisingly, Xiao Bao didn't resist this time. After falling to the ground, she only grabs the hem of Di Mingju's clothes. She raises her small head and looks at Mu Yan with eager eyes. Mu Yang is faced with an adult and a child staring at her. For a moment, she is somewhat silent. In fact, she had always known. Don't look at how Xiao Bao and Di Mingju don't seem to get along. But deep in his heart, Xiao Bao has always regarded Di Mingju as his father. He has called Di Mingju father more than once in private, but when facing Di Mingju, he refuses to say these two words. Because he also knows that Di Mingju isn't his real father. Although he longed for this powerful, handsome, and reliable man to be his real father, that would be great. One time, when they were sleeping, Xiao Bao even asked Mu Yang, "Nyang Qin, what is marriage? When you and Daddy got married, did Daddy become Xiao Bao's real father?" In fact, he has always longed for the time when he can properly call Di Mingju Daddy. Mu Yang raises her head, forcing herself to be calm in front of Di Mingju, but she can't hide her nervous expression. Suddenly, she burst into laughter. "All right." After saying that, she didn't care about her father and son's dull expression and turned around to leave. Di Mingju stands there in a daze for a long time before he abruptly comes back to his senses. "Xiao Bao, what did your mother just say?" Xiao Bao blinked his big eyes and suddenly said seriously, "I'm not telling you." Then he turns around and runs towards Mu Yan. As soon as he turned around, his little face broke into a smile, and he could not suppress the happiness and joy that spread through his heart. Nyang Qin and Papa are getting married. He would no longer be a child without a father. He would even have a soft and cuddly sister. Mu Yan enters the room and wants to close the door. A figure flashed in, and she didn't have time to react. The door banged loudly, and even Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit Qiu Qiu were locked outside the room. And Mu Yang is directly pressed against the door. The man's hot and messy breath hits her face. "Yang Yang, say your answer again." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.